to Your Health, Your Choice. My name is Dr. Roopnarine. And on tonight's program, we're going to be discussing the COVID-19 pandemic and our children. With me in studio tonight is, to give his own personal pandemic insights, is Dr. David Bratt. Dr. Bratt is a consultant pediatrician of many years standing, and he's based out of St. James. Dr. Bratt also has a weekly opinion piece in the Trinidad and Tobago Guardian newspapers. As usual tonight, our numbers should appear at the bottom of your screens, and we will do our very best to get to your questions in the final segment of the program. So guys, let's get the show on the way, and let's say hello to Dr. David Bratt. Hello, Doc. Thanks for coming in.
Very good, Dr. Roopnarine.
All right.
You want me to call you Dr. Roopnarine?
Robin is fine. Robin is fine. Good. So, Doc, you've been someone who throughout the pandemic has been contributing his weekly piece, keeping the population updated, keeping us in the loop. Trying to keep us in the loop. And one of the recurrent themes that I've noticed in your articles is that you've always sort of put forward that the public health regulations in terms of the lockdowns was having a detrimental effect, or could have a significant long-term detrimental effect to our children. Yeah. I was wondering if you could start off the discussion by just explaining to our viewers at home, how does the lockdowns affect our children, and maybe how we could sort of mitigate those going forward. Yeah. I know it's a loaded question, but take your time and
right. Well, I sometimes think as a pediatrician that the authorities never took into consideration the effect of lockdown on children. The whole thing was life versus livelihood, right, and not about what it was doing to children. And it has affected children badly. Now, children are flexible and they bounce back. And so I think we, the pediatricians, are hoping that in the long run, it is not going to affect them as badly as it is at the present moment, that they're going to bounce back. But we aren't sure about that. It has affected them in any number of ways, from simple things like increased headaches, back pain, lower limb pain, chest pain, difficulty breathing, panic attacks, anxiety attacks. It has really made life miserable for them. It's affected their eating. Obesity is now it was a problem before in children, overweight and obesity. It is now a larger problem. We're going to have to be looking at that. As you know, one of the comorbidities with this COVID outbreak is obesity. So at the same time as we are having the children locked down for them not to get COVID, we are building up a comorbidity which makes it worse for them when they get COVID. And that has been seen very well in the few cases of children who have died here and elsewhere. Because one of the good things about COVID is that children are not dying as much as we thought it was going to happen. So that's a long-term problem, because COVID is going to be around with us. We have to learn to live with it. And obesity is a bad thing to have when COVID is going around. And we're going to have, what is it, 1 in 3, 1 in 2 children in the next 10 years if they don't lose. When children gain weight, children 7, 8, 9, 10, it's very difficult for them to lose that weight. They go into negative habits. So one of the reasons, for example, that children have put on all of this weight is that they're not being allowed outside. One of the criticisms I've always had of the Ministry of Health is this idea that don't let your children go outside. Keep them safe. You'll save their life if you keep them inside. You're not saving their life because they're not dying as much as we thought they were going to die. So there's no reason to keep them inside, and that contributes again to the obesity. So it gets gets complex. And then being indoors, as we now learn, is a huge contributing factor towards contracting COVID as well. Precisely. So it's the information we were given really was very poor. This business of you have to stay inside and you mustn't go outside. No, it's the exact opposite all over the world. People are encouraged to be outside, to be sporting, to play in parks and walk and hike and so on and so forth. So that advice was really very bad. And there's a new study out showing that the virus dies outside within 5 minutes. In some instances, depending on the humidity, it may last up to 20 or 30 minutes.
Right.
This is a very weak virus that can't take pressure.
Right. So in terms of the effect of the lockdowns on the kids, other than the weight gain and the future long-term health problems, right? Yes. For me personally, looking not only with kids but looking at adults as well, looking at my own children, watching that other thing, I think it's been very traumatic and psychologically scarring. I still have a small pediatric practice, but even the adults and the young adults come in, and the elderly, and a lot of the times, I mean, it's not abnormal for people to break down and cry from loneliness. And when we dig past what the other might have been superficial medical reasons for presenting, I have realized, and it really hit me home this week, that loneliness has become a big problem, not just for adults and elderly, but also for children.
Yes. It is a huge problem affecting
loneliness.
The children come in, and it's not only a problem now, which is causing them mental problems, anxiety, as I said, panic attacks. We have seen children who have committed suicide, children who are taking antidepressants. So it is a huge problem right now. It's also going to be a huge problem when the children start to go back out to school. I am having children coming in and telling me they're afraid to go back out to school because they have lost the ability to interact with imagine a 9-year-old little boy tells me he's afraid, and he's not the only one, he's afraid to go back out to school. A 15-year-old girl is also afraid to go back out to school because she doesn't know how to interact, to socialize. And one of the things that they have seen away after they have opened the schools is a lot of confusion and combativeness and fights in the schools, because the other thing is that is happening. The children don't know how to behave with each other. They don't know these little physical cues that we automatically respond to when someone looks at you in a certain way. They have lost a lot of that.
Right. And I suppose socialization is what you gain when you go to school. You learn how to socialize with others, and you learn how to interact with others. The other part of it, which is a big issue, right, especially for young parents, is a lot of our kids are spending a lot of time on screens, on screen time, right? How does screen time affect children negatively? Because I saw you mention that in the article, but could you describe to us and even be very specific as to how screen time affects kids negatively? Because I would think that's probably the future of the world, right? Kids will probably go on, spend more time in front of technology, in front of computers. What's your opinion? I'm giving you the floor.
I hope not. I hope not. Remember that 2 years ago, the official advice of pediatricians to parents was that a child should not spend more than 2 hours total in a 24-hour period. Combined computer, mobile, tablet, and so on.
Right.
Now in Trinidad and Tobago, there are children who are spending 6 and 8 hours on the tablet. Some of these 5 and 6 and 7-year-olds are spending 4 hours on in front of a screen. What does that do to a child?
Yes.
Okay, it makes the children unhappy. Okay. It makes the children sour. It makes the children negative. They don't realize what it is doing. It does the same thing to adults. If you spend too much time in front of a screen, you find you get impatient.
Right. So the viewers can switch off after we finish.
But not now. Because they need
this is good screen time.
This may explain some of the reasons why there's so much tension within the homes. The kids cannot take all of this screen time, and their response. Some children, had a little boy in last week, he falls asleep. he simply falls asleep. He can't deal, and that's his way of dealing with it. The father brought him in because he thought something was physically wrong with him. There's nothing physically wrong with the child. The child is becoming mentally ill, and and the solution for him basically is stop watching the screen so much, go outside and play. That is the thing. Now, another thing that watching the screen does is that it's causing children to be short-sighted. And, there are sayings that in the next 10 years, if children continue like this, every child is going to be wearing, we are doctors, a lot of doctors wear glasses. Why? Because we beat a lot of book. Beating book is joke compared to beating screen, to looking at the screen. It is going to cause, and it is causing, my friends, the consultants that I talk to in ophthalmology are all saying that they're seeing children with increased short-sightedness. And just here, the piece of advice I give parents all the time, or I give to the children, is if you can, is the 20-20 rule. Every 20 minutes, stop for 20 seconds and look at something 20 feet away. It relaxes the lens, it relaxes the eye, it relieves the eye strain. And it also helps to get out of that psychological problem that you have of that, because looking at the screen increases your blood pressure, it increases your heart rate, you tighten up your muscles. It is awful.
And that's the screen time, the effect of the screen time. Now, I was watching a program before I came on, on parenting during lockdowns. It was an old program out of the US. And yes, they did mention screen time, but they said a lot of the kids develop behavioral abnormalities because they cannot interpret what is happening out there right now. And a lot of the times the kids feed off the anxiety of the parents. Now, obviously, it is a very anxious time, or should be less so now, but in the early days of the pandemic, it was a very anxious time for parents. And even in Trinidad, even worse, because we have an economic situation. What advice, would you give to parents or to young families who are going through the anxiety of COVID, financial stresses, and they try their best, I really do, they try their best to provide a normal environment for the child, but sometimes the child, I think, feeds off the anxiety and presents with behavioral abnormalities, the child behaving bad, child start a quarrel. How would you advise a family to deal with these issues, to normalize the environment? I don't want to answer the question I answered.
No, because this is a very important, very complicated question to answer. We have a saying in pediatrics that the child's environment is the parents. The child will do well if the parents are doing well. Children do badly when there are problems with their parents. The children reflect problems of the parents. I very often can tell what parents think of me by the way the child treats me. It's very clear. It's very clear. The parents are relaxed, the children are relaxed. The parents trust me, give the child a shot, the children are more relaxed, they cry less.
So they feed off the parents.
Feed off the parents. So it's the solution to this problem with the children, unfortunately, comes back to the parents.
I get your point.
Poor parents who are scared because, and there are many reasons for this. One of this, I have to say, unfortunately, is government-induced fear, media-induced fear, social media-induced fear, medically induced fear, because I think we doctors have not risen to the occasion in general and given people the support that they need, which for me is one of the reasons why we have so much of vaccine hesitancy, because there's a lack of trust. People are losing trust in the medical profession, and I don't blame them. So it gets back to the poor parents who now have to deal with all of these problems, as well as the economic issues, the social issues. There's no school, the children have to stay home. It is a stressful situation. It is absolutely awful and stressful for people. And
can you give any tips as to how to maintain a kind of constant normal environment for kids? You gave one big tip there, which is when you said that kids need to get outside and play.
Yes. That would be my major recommendation. Parents go outside and play with the children as much as you can. Now, we have parents who can't do that. So what do? They have to find other ways to play with the child. the solution for this really is play, whether it's outside or indoors.
Okay.
Children learn by playing.
Okay.
Children live by playing.
Okay.
Everything for a child. In Trinidad and Tobago,
So more playtime.
More playtime. Now, once you say that to parents, you know, the Trinidadians feel you have a thing called play and you have a thing called work, and you're not supposed to combine it. No, you can't do that with children. Children learn by playing.
Yeah.
Play is work
Yeah.
for a child.
Right.
And I remember years ago, a well-known Benedictine monk, he was the one who taught me that when he said, Trinidadians, for carnival time, work in the panyard, in the mass camps, they work, but for them it's not work, because they enjoy what they're doing, and for them it's play. And that was so important for me to understand that.
I want to ask you a real direct question now. Is it safe for our kids to go out and play with other kids now?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely safe.
I think that was an issue that parents were scared, because within my own social groups, you know, people like kids, my kids, their life is meeting the cousins, going out to birthday parties. But the parents were scared that they would get the kids sick if the kids interact with each other. We're in 2022 now, January 2022.
Things have changed.
Dr. Bratt, can our kids go out and play with each other?
Yes, they can go out. Especially with this new variant, which we have to be careful what we're saying, because it can change. But this new variant does give us some hope that it's not as lethal as the previous variants. It may be more contagious. Yes, you do have to be careful. I would still say that in a closed environment, you have to be careful who you're with. And you have to decide whether you want to wear a mask or not. But outside, yes, let the children go outside and play, play with each other. It's
all right. And the effect of the I suppose the effect of not interacting with other kids, not playing, is what causes negative impact on the kids.
It's all part of it.
So regulated playtime.
Yes.
And regulated socialization.
Free play.
What do you mean by free play?
Free play. The child decides what it wants to play.
Not the parents.
Not the parents. That doesn't work. That is not play. That is for the satisfaction of the parents. All right. Free play. They let children out. Now, I do want to say, if you feel a little concerned about letting your child out to play after all we've been through, and all of the education and all of the fear that we had initially, because everybody was scared initially, the lockdown and so on and so forth, and you have some fear, but let your child play in small groups of people whom are your friends, your family, neighbors, who you trust. Vaccinated, yes, and go outside and let the children need to go outside and play.
Fresh air, open ventilation. All right, Dr. Bratt, thank you very much. We're going to go for a short break, and when we come back, we're going to discuss a little bit about vaccines.
Cool. All
right, guys, we're going to take a 1-minute break. Dr. Bratt is going to collect his thoughts and we're going to discuss vaccines when we come back.
ACTN The Voice welcomes you to join us for our newest agricultural television series, Harvest. You can look forward to a personalized tour around scenic Trinidad and Tobago, showcasing different agricultural practices and teaching us self-sustenance. Explore the many ways to make your harvest right for you. Join us every Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. Harvest, a new dimension in agriculture. Sponsored by Munich Home and Garden, the Agricultural Development Bank, and the Plant Doctors.
Our lives feel so different now. School is more intense, work deadlines are shorter, and traffic takes hours every day. Despite all this, I want my family to have wonderful meals and spend time together, just like I did growing up. In my house, it's only Caribbean flavors. I spend less time at the stove and more time with the people I love. Quick, easy, delicious. Caribbean flavors.
Munich Home and Garden specializes in hardware, paint, home decor, tools, agricultural supplies, pet supplies, car accessories, appliances, and much more. located at Val Park Shopping Plaza, Atlantic Plaza, Point Lisas, and Eastern Main Road, St. Joseph. Shopping comfort with our well-secured outlets. Call us at 663-5163 or visit the Munich Home and Garden Facebook page or www.munichttt.com. Munich Home and Garden, where we make shopping a fun experience.
At Extra Foods, we care for you. That's why we always have the widest variety, the best prices, spacious aisles of total convenience, plus clean, safe surroundings. Let us care for you. Extra Foods, always extra for less.
All right, guys, welcome back. Your health, your choice. We're talking about COVID-19, pandemic, and our children. With me in studio tonight is Dr. Bratt. So, Doc, just before we left off there, we were about to talk about vaccines. Now, at some point in time, when I was going through your articles, I noticed a shift of opinion, right? Maybe around October or so, where you can correct me if I'm wrong, right? That you were saying that, look, you know, you're not pushing the vaccines too much. I think Dr. Joel was with you as well on one of those joint articles, Dr. T. Luxing. You're not really too pushing towards the vaccinations. And then somewhere around October, November, you kind of changed your opinion. Yes. And the last bit that left with me there was that you said that you would vaccinate your grandchildren.
Yes. Yes.
And that is a very poignant statement. Yes. You will vaccinate your grandchildren. Yeah. Can you tell us what happened and you changed your thinking? What made that kind of change?
When the original study, when the study, the only study really that was done scientifically, that awful word that everybody wants to quote and follow, the science was done, it was done on a very small group of children.
Right.
About 1,200 children who were vaccinated, another 12 children of similar characteristics.
When was this again?
This is back in June.
June 2021, right?
June 2021.
I want to get my timelines right for the audience.
And at the time when the vaccine was approved for the 12 to 18-year-old, this was this small little group.
Right.
And the follow-up in this group was 2 months.
Right.
And for me, that wasn't enough evidence
for you to bite in.
For me to say I'm going to vaccinate millions and millions of children.
Right.
So I preferred to say, hold on, let's wait and see if the thing works.
Right.
And then we'll see.
Right.
And this is what happened.
Right.
Since then, over 8 million children have been vaccinated in the States and in Europe, many more. And the side effects, those side effects that we were talking about,
which was myocarditis,
and the clots and so on and so forth, as well as the usual local fever and so on, have not been seen in the States.
Correct.
And there are studies to that effect.
Exactly.
So at that point, which would be around November, I think, I changed my opinion to yes, I would recommend it to parents.
Okay.
I'm not recommending it as a mandatory vaccine.
I understand.
Because when you talk about vaccines, you have to recommend vaccines for diseases. And you have to be sure that the vaccine side effects or adverse effects are not worse than the diseases. And so it's always you weigh up. So for example, I would agree, and I have agreed, you need to immunize children against diphtheria, whooping cough, tetanus, polio, measles, and so on and so on. These are all serious diseases. Now, along comes something like chickenpox, flu, and now COVID. These are not in the same category of seriousness as the ones that I previously mentioned. So the need to vaccinate those children against those diseases is not as great. they shouldn't be mandatory. I agree. DPT, polio, tetanus, and so on. Yes, they must be mandatory.
What you're basically saying is that the mortality from COVID-19
mortality and morbidity
yes. in terms of the pediatric population
yes.
is so low
yes.
that you don't see it as being necessarily something that will give greater priority.
Yes,
but certainly you'll have patient characteristics
yes.
that you'd want to vaccinate.
Exactly. So a child with sickle cell disease, leukemia, cancer, congenital heart disease, cerebral palsy, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
The high immune deficiencies, those are the high-risk groups. Yes, I would certainly recommend. I wouldn't put it as mandatory, but I would recommend that those children be vaccinated.
All right. Question from left field. Not only pediatrics, would you recommend mandatory vaccination for adults as well? Like, I mean, we have a kind of positive, persuasive.
Over the age of 60.
You would go from, you're a supporter of mandatory
vaccination. Because that's where the mortality is.
Right.
I think there have been about almost 800,000 deaths in the United States. And I keep referring to them because they have the best statistics.
Data,
75% of the deaths are in people over the age of 60.
Right.
Which is 3 out of 4.
Right.
So that's where the problem with COVID really is.
Okay.
All right, especially those people with comorbidity. So that's the one you really want. And I keep asking this question in Trinidad, what percentage of our over 60s are vaccinated? And no one seems to be able to answer the question. And they're the ones who...
That's the target. That's who we should be zooming in on.
That's where we zoom in. Now, people will jump up and say, well, yes, but you have children who get COVID. Yes, we've had 9 deaths, COVID in Trinidad and Tobago, and we have had a couple of thousand children with COVID.
Right.
Yes, and they talk about multi-system inflammatory disease and so on and so forth. And yes, you're talking about Omicron becoming more common in children and so on. And you're talking about younger people, younger adults getting sicker. Yes, all of that is fine. But there is... we're dealing with COVID and we're dealing with risks, and we have to decide what risks we're willing to take to live our lives to go back to normal, which is something that we cannot continue living the way we are living today.
All right. Doc, do you have any statistics in terms of the how many children get COVID? Was it mortality figures?
Yes,
because that could back up your opinion.
We can put up the American figures again.
All right.
So it gives people an
Giles,
idea.
if you have it ready. There we go.
Right. So these are figures from CDC, which I took on Monday, the 10th of January, 2 days ago.
Right.
The population of the United States, to give a little background, 333 million people. Population of children under age 18, 72 million, which is about 21%. So 1 in every 5 Americans is under the age of 18.
Right.
COVID cases, as of that date, 47 million plus. COVID cases in children under the age of 18, 7.5 million, which is 14% of the cases. So right away you see a difference. Population 21%. If the spread were throughout the population, it should be 21% of the cases being in children. But when you look at the deaths now, this is where this thing really stands out. In the United States, 713,261 as of Monday, the 10th of January. People have died. How many children have died? 1,084.
Not much.
1,084. Nothing. That's 0.15%.
Okay.
This is 2 years now. And this is live. This is real data. This is not some nerd sitting down in an office somewhere with a computer projecting mathematical things. 0.15% of the deaths in the United States are in children. Barely 1,100.
Right. Makes you kind of wonder whether we should lock down in the first place.
Well, exactly.
Well, I suppose we didn't have the data.
We didn't have the data, yes. And
in fairness.
We have the data now. And it's time for us to start looking at this data and say, and I have to say, in general, the pediatricians in Trinidad have been saying this since I would say October, over a year. I remember Dr. Joanna Paul at a media conference saying this, that the children are not the problem. It's the older people who are the problem. And there are reasons for this. And the other important thing to understand, to get back to children playing outside, by the way, is children don't give children COVID as much as the adults give the children COVID. All right, and people need to understand that it's not the children giving the grandparents, it's the grandparents giving the children the COVID. And no. Everything I'm saying here is nothing is 100% in life, especially in medicine. So yes, there are children who
but
give
2
it to
years later, we have more data, which will support what you are saying.
And what I'm saying. And
I have
we need to look at that data.
Yeah.
We need to look at it and say, well, let's back off on some of the things that we were saying.
Yeah.
Do we need to wear masks when we're walking in the street?
Yeah.
Maybe we don't.
Yeah.
Maybe you need to give people the responsibility.
Yeah.
I will tell you, if I'm walking in the street, if I was given the possibility, and I'm alone in the street, I take off my mask.
Of course.
Now, if I'm walking down Frederick Street and there are people all over the place, I will probably put on my mask.
You as an individual assess your risk.
Your risk, and you take personal responsibility for it rather than this authoritarian government telling you what to do at all times.
Well, personal responsibility is the hallmark of medical, of health. And that's what we try to teach.
Society.
And that's what we try to teach our patients and in society.
Yes.
So, getting back to the vaccination.
Yes.
Kids, where do we stand now worldwide in terms of the 5 and 11-year-olds? Not in Trinidad yet. I think in America they're being vaccinated.
Yes.
Where do we stand?
Well, first of all, worldwide, there's this terrific vaccine inequity. So it's,
vaccine apartheid.
Vaccine apartheid, which is a huge problem, really a serious problem. All sorts of people, from the Pope to everybody, is come. And the president, the head of WHO, has also been talking about it now. Well, it's even worse when it comes to children.
Okay.
Because the children in Europe, in general, Western Europe, and in North America, they are being vaccinated from the age of 5 up to the age of 18.
Okay.
Nobody has started to vaccinate under the age of 5 as yet.
Right.
And probably we won't have any results out until May or June this year.
Okay.
And in Trinidad and Tobago, we are vaccinating the teenagers, the adolescents, 12 to 18. The 5 to 11, we haven't started as yet.
Right.
And my advice, based on what I have read so far, is the same thing. Parents need to talk to their medical advisor and decide what they want to do for their children, for their child.
Okay.
Taking into consideration that the high-risk groups should definitely be vaccinated. Now, there's another thing going on. We're talking about mortality, but COVID also has morbidity.
Correct.
And there's this business of long COVID, which we don't understand very much about.
Not yet.
It looks as if about 2% of children who have COVID end up with long COVID, which means you have symptoms of COVID up to 3 months after the acute onset.
And what age group of children is that?
These are children
regardless
under the age of 18.
Right.
Now, that 2% may turn out to be 5% with Omicron. We don't know.
Right.
If that happens, then the calculation may change, and we may have to become a little more forceful in recommending, not in mandating, but in recommending the vaccine.
I think, and we were discussing this earlier when we were coming down, I think something very important for everyone to understand, not just practitioners, but our patients as well, is that things are very fluid, right? And sometimes information is given, you should do this, or doctors make a recommendation, or scientists make a recommendation, and sometimes they change the recommendation. And it's not because scientists don't know what they're doing or doctors don't know what they're doing, but more information has come to hand. And rather than going down the wrong road, changes or appropriation of the compass is made. And that is why sometimes people be like, well, why you made us do this? And then you came back and you said something different. Scientists could only react based on the data that they get in. And it is still the best way forward, is making scientific decisions based on the data.
Yes, it is. And mistakes have been made. I think what has not happened is, at least in Trinidad, that people haven't come out and said, well, look, we made a mistake.
Correct.
We closed the beaches. We shouldn't have closed the beaches, but at the time we thought it appropriate to do so. And now we have more information. We're going to open up the beaches gradually, and so on and so on. And all of that is fine, and people need to understand that.
That is normal scientific.
That is normal. That is the way science works. Now, people don't understand that.
Correct.
Especially people with an authoritarian streak, like in Trinidad and these small islands of the Caribbean. And they want someone to tell them, do this, based on whatever. And science isn't like that.
No.
Science changes according to the information.
Medicine is not black and white.
It's not black and white.
Yeah, there's always many fields are not black and white, but then there's always interpretation as well.
There are many ways to the mountain in medicine. There's never a single way.
Right. So I suppose vaccine hesitancy is a big problem in Trinidad.
Yes.
So many people many adults who did not get the vaccine might not want their kids to get the vaccine as well.
Yes.
Or they might be skeptical, might say, well, listen, we are worried that these vaccines are emergency use vaccines.
Yes.
We don't have long-term safety data.
Yes.
What do you say to those people? What advice would you give them? I mean, we respect everybody's opinion.
Yes.
But what scientific discussion would you have with a patient that comes into your practice like that to convince them either which way, if you could ever convince anyone?
I don't think it comes down to the science, I think it comes down to trust.
Yeah. Okay.
And if you trust your doctor, and to have trust in your doctor, you need to have had a long-term relationship.
Right.
And that's a problem in Trinidad. Too many people doctor shop and go from doctor to doctor. So you never build up a relationship with the doctor, because this is a classic situation in which you should be able to pick up the phone or go into your doctor and say, Doc, I want to know what you think I should do. Sit down and this is what I'm worried about. A lot of people, it's not vaccine hesitancy, they're calling it vaccine inquiry. They have questions about it, which we are not answering properly. One of the problems with the way we are vaccinating people in Trinidad and Tobago is we're using these mass centers. So, and they're very well run, and the nurses are wonderful, and people I have wonderful experiences the 3 times I have gone. But there's no chance to talk to the doctor if you're a little hesitant. Of course, if you're going in, you're probably not hesitant. But maybe the ministry should relent a bit and allow physicians in general to immunize.
Good point.
Now they're doing it with a number of doctors.
Or maybe make it more accessible for...
Make it more accessible, because my feeling is people coming and they say, Doc, you're not giving the vaccine. No, I'm not giving the vaccine, I don't have it. They say, well,
you might have lost someone.
Might have lost someone there.
The vaccine,
and I don't know how much difference it will make. It may make only 200 more cases a day. If you give it out to the...
Make a difference.
It may make a bigger difference. You have 1,000 doctors who are giving 2 immunizations in a day. That's 2,000 a day, So I think that it's time for our ministry to start thinking a little outside the box now, man. And see what, how
we can move forward.
Yeah, how we can move forward.
All right. So we're looking at everybody. I mean, we have a lot of, in Trinidad, especially with COVID, everybody, we divided 10 different ways sometimes, right? So who want to vaccinate, who don't want to vaccinate, who want to go back to school, who don't want to go back to school. But I think the one thing that we all agree upon in this country is that our children need to be educated, and we need to keep our children safe. So if that is the ultimate goal, our children need to be educated and our children need to be safe, how can you, asking a very complicated question, more of a public health question, how can we safely go about putting our kids back in school, in physical school? What changes need to be done? What preparation needs to be done? How do we operationalize that vision of getting our kids back out to school? So
the first thing to remember, the philosophy behind what we're saying, is that the first thing is that non-contact school is bad. Screen school is bad for children. The second thing to remember is that school is probably the safest place for children. It's been shown all over the world. The third thing is that really schools are the last things we should close or lock down, and the first things we should open. Not cigarette companies and fast food places. That is a problem. So now, how we deal with that
School question is more than just an environment for learning.
Much more.
In a society like Trinidad.
Much more.
It is a place of safety.
Protection.
It is a place of friendships. It is a place of...
You learn ABC because of your friends. In medical
relationships.
School, relationships. But you also learn academic stuff.
Of course.
Because the fellow next to you understands it, and he may say something funny, and you pick it up on that. So it's
And in Trinidad, some children get meals as well from school,
Yes, yes.
and they get access to medical care.
Definitely.
And they get access to counseling.
Teachers pick up.
And our
teachers are so important, and our teachers are so good at picking up social problems.
Yeah.
They're unbelievable.
Yeah.
The backup, what they do is another question.
Yeah.
That deserves another interview.
So we're going to take another break now, Doc,
Yes, sure.
and then we'll come back. So guys, we're going to take another break, and when we come back, you could send in your questions and your calls.
Welcome to the Chattox Kitchen, where it's tastier and spicier. For even more taste, cook with Chattox Amchar Masala, saffron, ground jeera, and black pepper. Mix in Chattox mild, spicy or madras curry. Get a burst of excitement with a mango amchar, homsade and mango kuchila, lime and pepper chunks, West Indian hot sauce, and lime pepper sauce. Plus, Chattox tamarind and mango chutneys are perfect with kalori and sahina. So make your kitchen a Chatta kitchen. Chattox fruit products, bringing good taste to life.
Keep the popcorn popping, no, we're not stopping. Relax. So you know we in session. Time for talk through, adapt, miss a load. Relax. So you know we in session. Don't you deal it, catch me on your TV. Every Thursday, ACTN The Voice in session. Yo, my name is Elisha. And my name is J. Prince. This Thursday and every Thursday at 8 p.m. we are in session.
ACTN The Voice launches a new and versatile culinary series called Stacy's Kitchen. Stacy will be packing up her trolley at Prasad's The Food King supermarket and making a special stop at the Chadak Lane. We will showcase how to make tasty international cuisine with our local products. We emphasize meals on a budget with our selected ingredients. Join us on ACTN on Monday evenings at 6:30 p.m. Don't miss Stacy's Kitchen, exclusively on ACTN The Voice.
All right, guys, welcome back. We have Dr. Bratt with us, and we're just talking about, at this point in time, trying to operationalize how do we get our kids back out of school, what sort of infrastructural changes that need to be done, what kind of recommendations can you make to keep our kids safe?
Yeah, well,
Doc,
basically it is what government policy has been all along,
right?
Which is that if you're sick, you stay home.
Yeah.
You don't come out of school. When you come into the school, you try to socially distance as much as possible, knowing that is difficult, but also knowing that children do not transmit the virus as much as adults do. The question of sanitation is always important, and so that means there needs to be tap with water in it and soap for the children to wash their hands a lot. Yeah. There's the question of using masks. That is a difficult one. Most people would seem to agree that in the classroom you use your mask and you try to keep children at least 3 feet away, which is very interesting because the whole thing was 6 feet. But there are some other things that you can do. So we know, for example, that outside is safer than inside. So schools that can actually do their classes outside, why not do it?
Exactly.
When I was a little boy, I went to Penal Primary Government School, and we used to go out. Well, it was under somebody's house, that was, and we used to be in the open, and we would actually go outside and sit down under the mango tree and do your ABC. Why can't we do where that is possible? We're trying to think again outside the box. And outside the classroom.
Outside the classroom.
If you're inside the classroom, then ventilation becomes so important. Before I forget, I want to bring up the idea of, in Europe, forest schools. What is a forest school? Forest school is the teacher takes the child outside into the garden or into a park, and they have school there, weather permitting.
Right.
Now, we go back inside. You can't go outside.
Yeah.
You need ventilation.
Yeah.
So air conditioning really is a no-no when it comes to COVID.
Of course.
You need windows open, you need doors open, you need fans.
Right.
And you need filters.
Yes.
One of the reasons, for example, that COVID is not a problem in airplanes is because of the immense filtering capacity. The air is changed every couple of minutes.
Right.
The viruses are killed. So that is why aren't we thinking of putting these HEPA filters into the classrooms?
True. And that is thinking like practically, right? You know?
Yes.
When the kids back out of school, I just get a picture like a phone call or panic, like, so Mr. Johnny came in, little boy Johnny came in, and he was tested, and he had COVID.
Yes.
And then suddenly the whole class erupted into chaos, you know?
Yes. That is no longer needed.
That is no, right. Exactly.
You do not have to close the school.
And send everyone home.
Close the class.
This is 2022.
This is 2022. There are other things that we can do. One of the things that we can do is test rapid antigen testing for children.
Right.
This is being done all over the world now in schools.
Yeah.
Children are tested in the UK routinely twice a week, whether or not they're symptomatic.
Right.
So this is another.
That's what I was getting at.
No,
yeah.
This is money that the government now has to spend for antigen testing, if we can get it, and for the filters.
Right.
But it's something that will make our children safer and in the long run benefit the country.
Right. Another question on the left, not just related to pediatrics, but it's a discussion. PCR testing, should we really be continuing on down the route of PCR testing, or what do you see the role of rapid antigen tests for the whole population now?
I think it's the way to go.
The time is now.
I think
the time is now.
It has some problems. It's not as strongly able to say if you're positive or not.
Yeah.
But it's so useful. You get your results in 15 minutes. It's easy. Any woman who has done a pregnancy test will know exactly what to do and how to interpret it. They are cheap, relatively cheap. I have heard of a company in India that is selling them in mass amount for $2.50.
Right.
It costs more. In England, the government in England and the government in the USA now intend to supply it free to the population. Why aren't we talking about this? Why aren't we thinking about it?
Especially in the view that sometimes when PCR testing is expensive in Trinidad, and also the ones that go through the health center recently, from the last program, a lot of our callers said that it's taken too long to get back results.
5, 6, 7 days.
And in medicine, we don't want our results to take long.
No.
We want our results back now.
You want your results as quickly as possible.
Because we have to react. We have to act.
We have to act.
Okay, so I would agree with you that I think rapid testing should become a big part of it.
Yes.
Josh, we have some calls. We have any calls or questions coming in? Yeah, you can go ahead, Jess. Sorry. Right, Doc, my daughter has an involuntary, so we're going to get some general pediatric questions.
Yes.
My daughter has an involuntary, which is fine. My daughter has an involuntary blinking of the eye more than normal. I am limiting her screen time, which helps a little. Just wondering what can be done, or what the cause of this is or could be.
Yeah, well, too much screen time.
Too much screen time.
It's very simple. Your mom, you've already, or sir, you've already basically given the answer. You know what to do. You need to cut down on the screen time, and you need to get the child outside. I would also get her eyes checked, because she may be developing short-sightedness. And of course, anxiety could be playing a role here, so that you need to talk to her and maybe get her checked out by her pediatrician and make sure nothing else is wrong. But most probably this is too much screen time.
Okay. Giles? I tested positive for COVID on Monday. Fortunately, I already took the Pfizer vaccine. However, I only am experiencing mild symptoms, runny nose, no breathing problems, no fever, and mild headache. Is this something positive or hopeful?
Yes. Well, this seems to be an adult.
Yeah.
I don't think a child has written this. Yes, this is. Remember that most people who get COVID get it mild or is asymptomatic.
Yeah.
Exactly what is happening to you.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the media and social media has made people scared of COVID. And yes, you have to respect it. That is a virus you have to be very humble and careful about. But most people who get COVID don't know they have COVID.
Okay.
Or they have it mild.
Right, exactly. So as usual, just general precautions. You watch your breathing, use mild over-the-counter medication, Panadol, anti-allergy medication. If you're breathing, get a pulse oximeter if you can. If you become breathless, your pulse oximetry dropping below 90, you make your way into a hospital.
So you're looking for complications.
You're looking. Yeah. And that is only a minority of the percentage of people.
Yes.
Everybody else, majority of people will be fine.
Yes.
Doc, Omicron is on its way to Trinidad. logically it's on its way.
Yes, it's here.
We've been seeing a lot of reports in the States which are a little bit scary. I don't know if it's about media reports, not medical scientific reports, and huge amounts of infections over the last 3 weeks, almost reaching the same amount that they had over the previous 18 months. They have said kids are being affected, kids are contracting Omicron. To our families at home. What would you say will be happening in Trinidad over the next few weeks, if you could predict it for them? How would you want our parents to interpret what is happening, what information you could give them, and how would we, in terms of public health, prepare for what may possibly be a surge of children being infected and seeking hospital care or medical care? In America, they're seeking hospital care. I don't know if that's the same going to hold true for Trinidad.
Well, again, most children, in my experience, and I think the experience of most of my colleagues, pediatric colleagues, COVID is a mild disease. Yes, a certain percentage of the children end up being hospitalized, and a smaller percentage end up in ICU, and an even smaller amount, number 9 so far in 2 years, have unfortunately died. You know, a child dies is a real tragedy, but children die, and I'm not sure people realize that in Trinidad and Tobago, every year, anywhere between 200 and 300 children die. That's a child dying almost every day. And before, as a pediatrician, I may sound a little sour when I say this, but no one really cared very much about those children who were dying before. There was no big fuss about it in the papers or anything. When I came to Trinidad in the 70s, between 300 and 400 children used to die of simple gastroenteritis. You know, that's and nobody took that on. That was normal in those days. You got your gastro and you went to the gastro ward, Port of Spain and San Fernando, and if you were lucky, you came out. We had 1 or 2 children dying a day. All right, nobody. So there's a little bit of bitterness there that I'm letting out because there's been too much emphasis on mortality in children, and yes, it's bad, but it's not as bad as we're saying. And then along comes Omicron, which seems to be, and the evidence seems to be pretty strong now. We have to be careful with this virus because this virus changes. We have to be humble with this virus. The
virus could make you a liar tomorrow morning.
Exactly. But so far, and even now from the States, is that while it's much more contagious and more children are getting it, it's not causing more serious disease. Now, you do have to wait because at least in the States, it's just its peak in cases, and we know that the deaths come a couple of weeks after the peak. So we have to wait another couple of weeks. But the hope is that Omicron is so contagious that everybody's going to get Omicron. Some people are going to end up in hospitals, a minor minority in the ICU. Some people, unfortunately, will die. But that Omicron will hopefully, because there's hope now. There's hope now that it will become more like a flu. We're not calling it a flu as yet. We're afraid to say that. But in fact, when I deal with most children who have COVID, you're treating them as a flu. You know, observation that they don't get vomiting, diarrhea, abdominal pain, they need cough and so on, and a lot of fluids and tender loving care and hugs from mommy and daddy. And that's all you're doing for them. You're not doing anything else. And you don't have to do a PCR test. I'm not recommending it. I'm not. If you want to do an rapid antigen test, that's fine, because it allows you to confirm and to follow the course of the disease. So, but there is this. Imagine if Omicron was like Delta. You and I would be sitting down there, the mood would be so much worse. Somber. Scared, somber, this post-traumatic stress syndrome that all of us are going through would have got worse. People would be more tense. Now there's some hope in the air. Who knows?
And Omicron is a mild virus, so far, based on the data. Unlikely, based on our discussions with previous guests, that a virus is going to go into a milder form to survive with us and then mutate to a more dangerous form. So it appears to me, in my opinion, that the virus has decided to kind of ease its killing ways and survive with us. And I think we will begin to see that in the coming months. Would you agree with what I just said there?
I agree with you, and I hope and I pray that this is what is going to happen.
Right. Whilst we're on the topic of hospitalizations with the Omicron, from your articles, right, again, one of the last few weeks, you've been heavily emphasizing, heavy talk on the mortality figures that are coming out of the hospitals. Mm-hmm. What is it that is troubling you there? For the average person who does not understand figures and what is normal and what is not normal in terms of the numbers of deaths in any cold case, what is troubling to you? What questions do you have? Put forward your point of why this thing is startling or troubling you.
Yeah, well, it's troubling because it's one of the highest in the world.
Yeah.
Your last guest made a
Professor
comment.
Harry.
Yes, yeah. Professor Harry made a comment that was, what is it like working in an intensive care unit? And he said he would go in at 8 in the morning, make his rounds, finish at 4, at 12 o'clock, 4 hours later. And during that time, 2-3 people would have died every morning.
Yeah.
That shouldn't be happening.
Yeah.
Why is this happening?
Yeah.
And I can't answer it because I'm not working in the intensive care units.
No.
But it's a question that we should be asking of the people working in the intensive care units, doctor to doctor. We're not looking to criticize, we're not looking to apport blame, but why is this happening? It's very unusual, you know. When we looked, I think maybe only 150, 160 people had died up to April. And then since May then, 2,700, it's staggering.
Yeah.
The figures every day, one an hour is what people are talking about. What is the reason for this? As a doctor on the outside, I don't know how they treat. I don't know what treatment is available. And there are questions being asked in society, what is happening?
Of course. And this is probably a premature question. What learning lessons could we take from all of this? What has happened in the last 2 years? Is there any learning lessons at all from a pandemic? You're a man with close to 40 plus years experience as a doctor. What is the learning lessons from this, Dr. Bratt? It's been all agony and trauma. How could we move forward and learn? What do we learn?
COVID has exposed all of the inadequacies in the health system in Trinidad and Tobago. And we need to own up, look at those problems. Simple things like the hours that doctors work and the consultants, how many days a week they go in, doctors, their private practice, all of that we need to look at before another pandemic comes along, because we're going to have another one in the next 5 or 10 years. Okay. This is just the first of what related to climate.
Of course. Destruction
of the environment. Germs moving out of their natural habitat into the human because we're interfering with them. And so we need to, that's the lesson that we have to take. What are we learning from this?
Right. We just have one more question and 2 more minutes. So Jazz, let's take the question. If you can, please. Soon to consider third shot with Pfizer, how should I deal with the possible known side effect of myocarditis or pericarditis?
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure if this is a question concerning children, but if it is, there is not a problem.
Exactly.
There's not a problem with myocarditis or pericarditis with the third shot.
In fact, all right, probably next question, Giles. My son is in SCA class and he has been getting nosebleeds more regularly. Is this stress-related or is it something more serious?
No, it's probably not very serious. This is an incredibly common problem related to pollution in the environment. We get back to the problem with climate, and that's a major problem with children with nosebleeds. Obviously, a doctor should have seen your child and made sure there's nothing more malignant.
Of course. So, Doc, we've come to the end of the program.
Very good.
The hour flew by. I'm going to give you, my senior colleague, the last word to all our viewers at home. Is there anything you would like to say, any piece of advice?
I want to come back to the question of hope. It's wonderful that I can come here and say there seems to be a ray of hope on the horizon. And yes, we may be wrong, and And you all may get upset with me for saying this in 3-4 months' time, but we do have to be positive as much as possible. And remember, we can get through this if we all join up together and cooperate as best as we can and assist each other. That is all I want to say.
Well said, Doc. Well said. All right, guys, so that's the end of the show. And again, I'd like to thank Dr. Bratt for coming in. It's a long drive down. He came in, he shared his personal thoughts. He gave us good medical information, gave us hope going forward. He reassured us, and we would like to thank him for that. To all of you at home, thank you for tuning in and watching our show tonight. We hope that you learned a lot. To all those who sent in messages, thank you very much for your participation. And, well, that's it. Have a good evening, everyone. Have a good night. Keep safe. God bless. We'll see you again next week. Take care.